Let's do it very nice and light, finding towards the middle of my paper. Now I see my center, find your middle point. Right about center, tilting over to your right side. We're going to start with a rectangle here. Nice and light, I'm going to build downwards my rectangle, being very, very gentle on my pencil. Now a simple little Hershey's chocolate bar in my page is what I'm thinking of right now. Now Hank, he does have eyes, and he does have that eye line. So we need to utilize what's called guidelines to help us place in those features. Now, since we're going to be drawing Hank in a 3/4 tilt, our center guideline is going to be pushed more towards the right side of our rectangle. Going inwards, I'm stretching through the center guide here. Now for the eye line, I'm going to go down about 1/3 into my shape, placing down from left to right this guideline. And I'm also going to jump in about 1/3 as well on my right, facing from my bottom inwards. So we got these guides, we got this really messy, a little bit of a sketchy looking box here, but it doesn't give Hank, right? To place in our features to start, I'm going to do our eyes first. Now, in my left quadrant here, in my rectangle, I'm going to go in with a circle. Very, very light, I'm going to build up my line here. Now, when Hank is giving us that 3/4 turn, this left eye is more of a circular shape, while this right eye is more of an oval shape. And I'm going to allow this oval to slightly sit on the outside of my rectangle. Now with these lines, I'm going to go ahead and leave them light because I want to build in my eyebrows first. Hank, we know, is very, very sassy. So we're going to show off a sassy look with these eyebrows. Starting with this U on front of my left eye, I'm going to build up this eyebrow to be kind of like a macaroni noodle. A parenthesis on the left and a parenthesis on the right. I'm going to allow this eyebrow to start lifting up and outside of my box here. Now this left eyebrow is lifting upwards. I'm going to have my right eyebrow be more of a rainbow. So kind of following through where that swivel of my pencil would be, coming upwards from my nice big U, I'm going to continue through a rainbow towards my right side. Now this rainbow still slightly lives inside the middle of your rectangle, but does poke on out. Creating the bottom rainbow, we see the base of your eyebrow. Now we're going to build it upwards, creating like a macaroni noodle shape once again, going up and on the outsides, and thickening up this nice big block of a brow. Now that we have those like eyebrows, we got that shape kind of going on in, I'm going to teach you how to lock in our eyebrows first, since it's in the foreground of our eyes. So y'all, we were a little messy, a little sketchy, and that's fabulous. Now to lock in, we're going to use our pencil still, just adding a wee bit of pressure. When you add a little bit of pressure, you're just going to glide your pencil back and forth on your favorite rough and sketchy lines, creating this nice dark bold line there. This is the beauty of rough sketching. If you're still finding your favorite line and you want to keep it light, go ahead and do that until you're comfortable. Only lock in your favorite part of your sketch. Now, rough sketching helps us speed up the process of drawing because it eliminates the need to erase. When we have that very, very bold, confident line work, our eye gets attracted to it, right? If you look up at the screen, up at my drawing, don't your eyes get more attracted towards the eyebrows than the eyeballs? That's all due to this confident, locked-in line work. So go ahead, you can also shade in these eyebrows a wee bit to add a bit of tone to them if you'd like. Once we get our eyebrows in, it's time to give our eyes some lines. Now, Hank's eyes are that full circle shape, so I'm going to allow myself to lock in the whole circle, okay? Now, this movie, both Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, very, very iconic films, right? Now, we do have to thank a very iconic director named Andrew Stanton for the creation of Finding Nemo. Now, Andrew Stanton has also worked on other feature films, such as WALL-E, and as well as some live-action TV shows. This series called Stranger Things. Have you guys ever seen that? Yeah, so he's very good at making some very cute and lovely family-oriented stories and some scary, spooky, creative stories too, right? But when we look at this specific series of Finding Nemo and Dory, we see a very big, echo of a relationship between a father and a son. And happy Father's Day, by the way. But with this relationship between a father and son, we see all the anxiety that Marlin has when becoming a new parent to Nemo. And that was something Andrew said he created kind of on purpose to help him cope with having his first, child. It helped him relieve all that anxiety. With our eyes here, I'm going to go ahead and draw through a nice guideline in between the two, stretching back and forth right towards the middle of my circles, creating this straight line. This is actually our lid line. I said it earlier, Hank's a pretty sassy character. Now his voice actor is Ed O'Neill, and Ed O'Neill is known to be some very sassy dad-like figures in TV series. He's best known for Modern Family as well, being the person who's married to Gloria. But Ed O'Neill makes Hank very, very confident, very silly. So with those guidelines locked in only towards our eyeballs, I extended out my lash line and I'm going to shade in this top of his eyelid to add a different layering of tone here. Now for our pupils, since he's giving us maybe a side eye, we can already start to feel the sass. I'm going to utilize a circle. Now I'm going to draw through all the way my whole circle over my lid. Now when you draw through, this is a technique to help artists keep perspective accurate and to keep correct proportions. So I'm drawing through my top, but when it comes to locking in this shape, I'm only locking in the bottom that sticks out here, so we can have some layering. Just like we did with that eyebrow, cutting off the top of our eyeball on the left, we are layering our pupils. Now, eyes, these are very important because this is where us as an audience member can connect with our character. So you want your pupil to be one of the darkest parts of your drawing. So jumping on in here, we're going to lock that down nice and dark. But we just got a floating pair of eyes. This could be literally any character, right? If you're like, Emily, I want to make something totally different. Now's your chance of free will. But to start drawing Hank, we're going to give him some arms. Now, usually an octopus has 8 arms, but he's a septopus. He has 7. But we're only going to be drawing 4. To start, we're going to start with our left side. Jumping down to where my left side of my rectangle is, right before my horizontal guideline down on the bottom, I'm going to start to bring outwards this nice stretched out diagonal line. Once I have that stretched out diagonal line, I'm going to create a nice little C curve on the bottom, allowing this to go ahead and start merging right underneath our big rectangle with a stretched out U. So if we look at it, it looks like a nice L. Now once we get underneath our body of our rectangle, we're going to use another C curve, but going the opposite direction on the very end. So start to see some movement. Something that's very important about this character is really enhancing the movement in his legs. Because something that we know about these octopi is that they move very mysteriously underwater, right? They have these little tentacles on their legs that allow them to stick and kind of move themselves through and out and about. And they can squeeze through tiny little crevices too. It's crazy. Now we're going to mirror the same curve of our C, creating a nice thick leg down here on the bottom. Now as I get towards my center guideline, this is where I'm going to curve upwards, creating a nice big arch that now cuts inside of my rectangle, showing us the other side of that leg, pulling through what's called a stretched out S-curve. Now when it comes down to this leg, we can lock this one in because it's going to sit in the foreground of every other one. So I'm going to go through my lines, really enhancing these curves and making it seem nice and fluid. Now when we look at line work and animation, a lot of the times characters are broken down into simplified shapes. And I've said that a couple of times, but I really want you to realize that characters can be a mix of C's, parentheses, U's, rainbows. Now every time we look at a character, shapes help us build up different styles and different looks, but as well as line work does. When we see a character that has really intense, sharp lines or very rigid line work that seem very aggressive, can anyone guess what type of villain, or oh, I gave it away, womp womp, that type of character is usually a villain. Now if we have a character that's really rounded out and not sharp and aggressive, we think of that character as being happy-go-lucky, right? A very kind, approachable guy. That's something that's awesome about animation. You can design characters to kind of fit whatever look you want them to have. Now with this leg, we have a nice sassy little hand here, right? Let's go ahead and build up another one. Now I like to think of this as the cinnamon bun. Going from my left-hand side here, I'm going to start swiveling upwards a nice curvy U. This U is going to be the bottom part of our cinnamon bun. So we're going to bring this inwards with a nice parenthesis curling towards your rectangle. Now the top, we're going to start bringing it inwards to create that little curl. When you have this curl, you're going to bring it through the middle here, swooping up. Now in the middle of your cinnamon bun, this is where we're going to see the very top of his little leg. So bringing through a half rainbow, I'm going to meet that with a smaller parenthesis so you can see the very end of his hand there. Now the back of your cinnamon bun is going to just start to merge to the back of your rectangle. So lightly, I'm going to start spreading through, and I stretched out half U. From where my eye line is, back down to that cinnamon bun leg. Now I'm going to keep all of this light real quick because I want to jump to the back of Hank's head. So we can lock down incorrect layering, we're going to draw through very lightly this oval that sits in the foreground of this back leg here. This oval sits right by your horizontal line for that eye line. Now this is the little section of Hank that allows him to breathe in air. It's his mantle. So he shoots in a lot of water inside here, he breathes it in, and when he pushes out, he pushes through this mantle. So we're going to stretch up a nice U curves going back inwards towards Hank's body. Now on the far left side of the oval, as I stretch this one back towards his eyebrow, we're actually going to show where the back of that head is, bringing your line all the way to your brow there. Now on top of this, he has his brain. Now, his brain sits with a nice big U curve. In between where your cinnamon bun leg is and where that oval is, start this nice big U. You're going to wrap this in, allowing it to land right towards the top of your head here. Wrapping in the nice stretched out S curve. Now that we have the back of our head and that little leg there, I'm going to go ahead and lock in here. And I actually, I said this incorrectly, but if you look up here, we actually have the actual layout of what is what, right? The arms and the suckers, we have the segment and the mantle. Mantle is where the brain is, and this is where he breathes in water. So we're going to go right up here, locking this oval first. And then you're free to lock in all your lines that we just drew, making them nice and bold. Now this movie, Finding Dory, came out about 20 years after the first film. That's quite a jump there. Now some say the reasoning why this film, Finding Dory, was even created was due to our character Dory, aka the voice actor, Miss Ellen DeGeneres. Now Ellen very much pushed for the story to be created. Apparently she really wanted to see a second film come to life, and they ended up making that happen. Now when creating these characters and really starting to get a hold on what the designs would be and how to make them move in the water, the story artists and all the artists on the teams are actually required to take courses in marine biology. This in oceanography, and they really got to the point of focusing on how fish move. Now they ended up, getting the correct feeling of how they swim, how they move underwater, and getting that motion down to a T. Because when we watch the movie, it really does feel like we're seeing it from the fish point of view. And I love in the second film of Finding Dory specifically, when we see them more up on land. You do get a very good juxtaposition what it's like to be underwater versus on the land. Now that we have this all locked in, let's go ahead and draw our last little leg over on the left. Now this leg up here is going to be tilted up and out. So I'm going to start on the very bottom. On the bottom left-hand side from your cinnamon roll area, you're going to start swiveling upwards another U. From this U, you're going to curl inwards, going up and out with a parenthesis. At the top of your parenthesis, you're going to do a quick little rainbow here. With this rainbow, we are seeing the points of the outside of your leg. So going back inwards, we're going to go through with a stretched out rainbow on top, mirroring that same arch, curling in, creating this nice big hook shape. With the top of your hook shape, you can swivel through a little U, landing this big hook shape right back into your nice little centered arm. Go ahead and lock all of this down. Now, I will say when, we got told about the production of this film, specifically I'm going to talk about Finding Nemo again. When they were in the production of it, Andrew Stanton already had written most of the script. That's because, like I was mentioning earlier, he was really focused on writing a, whole story, kind of getting a pitch Bible together on what this story could be to help him cope as becoming a first-time parent. Now, he wrote down a lot of things, but the story was actually going to be a bit different. Originally, Dory wasn't going to be involved, and there wasn't another female side character. And Gil, the character that has all the scarring on him, was going to be one of the more main characters in the film. Now, he said that when he was getting it greenlit and the story was being picked up by production at Pixar, and he was starting to rewrite the scripts and kind of get the movie going in a different direction, he was in a stuck little rut. He ended up sitting one day and hearing his wife listen to the Ellen DeGeneres show in the background. And hearing that show distracted him for a little bit. And it kind of got him feeling inspired. He ended up watching a few episodes apparently and getting it really, really invested on the way Ellen spoke. Very ditzy, very silly. And with that, he found this concept of Dory. He actually reached out to Ellen and asked her if she'd be interested in voice acting, and she said yes, really starting the whole wave of Miss Ellen becoming our Dory. Now with these lines, I just added a few little underlaying lines on my front tentacle and over here in this back one to add some little sticky spots. Now we need to actually build up this right side. How you guys doing out there? You guys still having fun? This guy's pretty crazy, huh? We're building up a cool character. Now, with this front leg, this is where we're going to see him holding out his little hand here. So we're going to jump back towards your right eyeball. We're going to draw through the back side of his head, so he's not brainless. We're going to go in between your two eyebrows, just kind of lifting upwards a small rainbow. Now that rainbow, if you follow through that line of action through your right side of your brow, it's going to land in front of your eye there. Now you're going to let your eyes still sit in the front, creating a nice little layering look. Now underneath your eye, where the side of his head would be, you want to continue through. And we're going to start to slightly pull outwards a small little half U, very steep half U. Once you hit your horizontal line, that guideline we made earlier, once you hit that guideline, you're going to swivel upwards a very steep U going back up. And you're going to curl upwards this nice big letter J. You see that? Nice big letter J. On the very top, we're going to go to the same height as our eyes. That's about the same height as you want the very top of your hand. So I'm going to start with a rainbow at the same height as my eyeballs here. And connecting that rainbow downwards to my letter J, so I can start to see the inside of my leg. Now for the bottom side of my leg, to see it all the way through, on the very far right side of my top of my rainbow, I'm going to cut downwards a small parenthesis. Now to build inwards from that parenthesis, I'm going to mirror the same curve, creating a little shark fin down here. With that shark fin, we are seeing a sassy little hand being held up. So to add some fun little layering, we're going to go right underneath that line of your hand, and you're going to start to pull downwards a nice big shape. And I like to call this a stretched out S. Because if you look at the very top of your line, you're going inwards towards the right. At the very bottom of your line, you're going to go backwards towards your left. Now once you have your stretched out S curve, you're going to pull it underneath your body. going down towards your rectangle with a big U. Once you have your U touching your rectangle, we're actually going to flip that U upside down, creating a rainbow that lands on your left leg. Now this little rainbow is actually the start of Hank's mouth. Now even in the movie, we don't see him talk too much, of course, because he's kind of mumbling and his mouth sits on the bottom. So to show that off, using the base of your rectangle, you're just going to mirror that very flattened out rainbow there, showing this little opening on the bottom of your shape. Now that's showing off where Hank's mouth is. I feel like his most iconic line in the whole thing is like, "I'm going to Cleveland," the whole time. Now inside of this leg, this is where I do really want to show off more tentacles, right? What makes an octopus laugh? Tentacles, ha ha ha. Now inside this leg, I'm going to go in with a very stretched out parenthesis on the very bottom right side. This is where you can add a few more ovals for some detailing. I like to add in about 3. And then right on this little hand here, this little paw, I'm going to go right underneath, showing off a nice big parenthesis, locking that line in. And then inside here, I'm going to only add in 2 ovals. Now, I'm going to add in, just for some little detailing, this guy's stressed, right? He does not want to go back out to the ocean. He said, "Please, oh please, do not send me there." So we're going to make him look even more stressed by adding down these saggy little lines that are stretched out half U's underneath both eyes. To add in texture, I'm just going to bring my pencil lightly up and down and in and out, adding in these nice little eye bags. Me too, Hank. And then, for some fun, I'm going to add a bit of texture throughout his whole entire body. Using the side of my pencil, I'm going to just create these random little spots. Now, we do learn that these creatures, an octopus, are very intelligent. They're able to manipulate their body to their surrounding being that they are next to, whether it's some rocks or, coral. They can change their body to mimic what they're around. Now, we do have, I think, a National Geographic video, and last summer, the reason why we started drawing Hank was because it was the summer of the octopus. And they actually had a National Geographic about these characters, or I should say, these animals. Now, anything else you want to add is going to be up to you. The last thing every artist needs is a signature. So somewhere, nice, big, and proud, go ahead and sign your work, as you just drew your own octopus, or sectopus, right?